Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. It begins at Madison Square Garden with a professional wrestling match taking place. A man in the crowd, Connor MacLeod, isn't enjoying his night as it reminds him of a time that his family got into a fight with the neighbors. He leaves the stadium when confronted by a man named Facile who attacks him with a sword, but luckily MacLeod brought his own. The assassination would have gone better if he didn't announce himself, but the 57-year-old stunt coordinator's got some moves. He goes a bit overboard with the flippies, so Connor ends the fun by removing the fellow immortal's head and absorbing his energy. All of the loser's strength and knowledge is shoved into the victor in a process called the quickening, while everybody who likes wrestling has their car destroyed. Connor then stashes the murder weapon and flees the scene as we transition back to the 1536 Scottish Highlands. Times were clearly tough, as this is apparently the face of an 18-year-old Connor who rides to his first ever battle with the clan. His lover Kate wishes him good luck, while Dougal MacLeod promises to keep his cousin safe as they face down the rival family Fraser. They have about the same size army, less a few bagpipes, but their leader's been reduced to just a side piece for the sadistic Kurgan. He warns the Frasers not to touch Connor, so when the two families meet on the battlefield he's confused as to why the enemy all just avoid him. The Kurgan has come to kill the man-faced teenager himself and impales him with his sword while shouting that there can be only one. Before he can finish him off, the MacLeod cousins force Kurgan back and make his army retreat from the battlefield. Dougal and Angus take their dying cousin back to the village, where his final moments alive are to be spent listening to Kate wailing. Back in modern days, MacLeod's arrested after beheading Facile and Detective Moran is put on the case. CSI Brenda wanders onto the scene and is the only one able to find Facile's historical $1 million sword. Moran and an unhinged uniform are correct in their assumption that Connor killed Facile, but their interrogation gets them nowhere. He says that maybe the victim just got depressed from the wrestling and cut it off himself, so with a lack of evidence the suspect walks free. Elsewhere, the Kurgan going by the name Kruger hears about Facile's murder over the radio and takes up residence at a motel in the city. He now sports a scar across his throat and practices his sword techniques while waiting for Candy to arrive, as a man still has needs. Brenda analyzes a fragment of Connor's sword found in Facile's neck and learns it's from a 2,000-year-old sword, so she returns to the crime scene. Instead of retrieving his katana, Connor follows the investigator to a bar as he recognizes her from her book about the subject. He intends to have Brenda drop the case and couldn't have scripted a better way to do it than having Kruger show up and attack them. He's come to collect the Highlander's head and absorb his energy, while Connor is at a disadvantage with only a metal pole to defend himself. Their duel's cut short by a police helicopter, so Connor retreats home, where he's known as the wealthy antique dealer Russell Nash. We flash back to 1536 again, where Connor has made an unexplained recovery overnight, which gets everybody nervous. Instead of believing this is a miracle, the MacLeods think it's the work of Beelzebub, and Kate of all people rally them to burn her man alive. They drag him outside to be executed, where the clan leader Angus is the only one defending him from the rabid mob. He instead exiles Connor, who sometime later works as a blacksmith and marries a beautiful woman named Heather. One day the couple is visited by the chief metallurgist to the King of Spain named Juan Sánchez-Villalobos Ramírez. He lets it be known that he's an immortal just like himself, who can only die if their heads are separated from their bodies. The Highlander goes through the quickening for the first time and has it proved to him when Ramírez knocks him into the lake, but he doesn't drown. Unable to swim, he just sinks to the bottom and marvels at the aquatic scenery before walking up to the surface. He tries to attack Ramírez, but he's way too skilled and willing to train Connor to defend himself. He explains that when only a few of them remain, that they'll feel compelled to meet for the gathering, which is a royal rumble of immortals. The last man standing will receive the cumulative sum of every quickening, which Ramírez refers to as the prize. The two train for an undisclosed amount of time until Connor can best even the 2,000-year-old immortal in a sword fight. Their discussion turns towards their kind being sterile and how Heather will react when she's told that they will never have children together. The man who made the katana's daughter was Ramírez's wife, and when she died of old age he was heartbroken, so he urges Connor to avoid the same fate. He says the Kurgan is the strongest of the immortals, descended from a barbarian tribe of Russians who would throw babies to the wolves. He must not achieve the prize or the mortals will be the ones who suffer, and there can be only one victor in the end, or so we keep hearing.
There can be only one.
One night while Connor's away, Ramírez senses trouble, but it's too late to flee as Kurgan arrives searching for the Highlander. Ramírez says that Connor has already been trained by the better duelist, who slashes Kurgan's throat, but not deep enough to do the job. He chases him up the tower and knocks him back down, but the big lug has beheaded enough immortals that his strength is unmatched. He blows away chunks of the tower walls with every hit, and he takes another mortal wound from Ramírez but just pulls it out. He strikes down Ramírez, who claims that Heather's his woman so that she won't be used against Connor before getting finished. Kurgan receives the quickening from the dead immortal, which causes him to fall from the tower, so Heather assumes that he just died. He didn't obviously, but lets her live unaware that she's Connor's wife, and when he returns the two go on to have normal lives. But just like Ramírez warned them, Heather dies of old age without having any children and thanks Connor for spending time with her. He buries her beneath the MacLeod family sword and replaces the inventory space with his mentor's katana before leaving Scotland. In modern days, Brenda discovers Connor's alias and visits his office, where his assistant Rachel knows all about his immortality. Connor convinces Brenda to go on a date with him as she wants to learn about how he acquired the sword, but Rachel's hoping that he'll fall in love. In one of the goofiest transitions, we learn from a flashback that the Jewish girl was rescued by Connor when the Germans invaded Poland. She learned about his secret after he was shot in the back by a race so superior that it refuses to drop its gun. In present day, Connor goes around Brenda's for dinner but knows that she's trying to set him up when he finds a gun and tape recorder. Brenda insists that she only wanted to know about Connor's sword, which samurai didn't even have until 1,000 years later, but he tells her to drop it. He reconnects with fellow Immortal Castigier who's been summoned by the gathering, and the two friends talk before the final showdown. We flash back to 1783 Boston, when Connor was blind drunk but expected to face a man in a duel. It's all over him calling his wife a warthog, so Connor doesn't fight back and lets the man defeat him repeatedly. When he's fed up with all the winning, he takes his frustration out on his servant while Connor just wanders off. In the present day, some retired soldier comes across Kruger and Castigier dueling in an alley and wants to be a hero. He doesn't actually do anything until Kruger defeats the Immortal, then he lights him up but just gets run through for his attempt. Realizing he isn't going to give him any power, he tosses him aside before receiving the quickening in full view of the public. Once empowered, he steals some old guy's car and wife, who most likely doesn't survive her encounter with the crazy driver. The soldier survives getting impaled and rejects Moran's suspicion that it was Connor to give a full description of Kruger. With him now identified, the Immortal alters his appearance and goes to the church where Connor has lit a candle for his late wife. He's just shaved his hair with a lawnmower and safety pinned his neck closed like he looks any different. He talks about forcing himself onto Ramírez's woman the night he fell, but realizes Heather was actually Connor's wife by his reaction. She had never told him about what happened, and Connor wants revenge but is reminded that immortals cannot fight on holy ground and leaves. Elsewhere, Brenda learns that the real Russell Nash died at birth and that Connor has been signing documents for hundreds of years. She confronts Rachel, but the loyal friend just plays dumb until Connor can return and explain who he really is. With everything she's seen, she already believes him, so stabbing himself with a knife to prove it is a bit unnecessary, but it gets him a kiss anyway. The two begin a relationship, which is just all around bad timing as Kruger finds out about it and decides to kidnap Brenda. Her gun was all for nothing, and Kruger takes her on a drive around town until she passes out from all the excitement. He tells Connor to meet him at the Silvercup Studios, where Brenda's tied to the top of the sign's S for the final showdown. Connor tells Rachel that she knew this time would come and that no matter who wins the fight, he isn't coming back. He goes to the studio where Kruger's waiting to begin their epic sword fight and is rather quickly knocked down to the rooftop. Before he can free Brenda, Kruger begins shredding the legs of the sign, so he jumps down to continue the fight as the sign collapses. Eventually, a water tank floods the rooftop, so Connor uses it to his advantage as the last of the sign collapses and Brenda barely manages to hang on. Kruger locates Connor again, but they fall through the roof and land in the large empty warehouse below to continue fighting. Connor gets disarmed, but just when he's about to be slain, Brenda saves him and he immediately pays her back. With a series of smaller cuts to the body that send his eyes black, Connor slices Kruger's neck deep enough that all of the energy pours out. The head pops off like a lid and MacLeod experiences the sum of all quickenings, which shatters all of the windows in the warehouse. It picks him up in a whirlwind of spooky special effects and gives him the ability to read people's minds. He returns to Scotland with Brenda, and we hear his mentor's voice tell him to use his new power to influence people for good. Connor's also able to have children now but has become mortal, so we get this final warning from Ramírez.
Don't lose your head.
And the movie ends.